Welcome to Executive Order Watch.
The immigrants have arrived.
I know. I have the package.
Any employee described in sub 1 paragraph or of paragraph 2. With respect to the publicly held Core 3 Paration, which is a member of such control group, and 5, any employee who would be described in sub-paragraph of paragraph 7. If such sub-paragraph were applied by 8, taking into account the employees of all 9 members of the controlled group. For purposes 11 of this paragraph, the term Control Group 12 means any group treated as a single employer 13 under subsection, or of Section 14,414. The amendment made by 16 this section shall apply to taxable years beginning after December 17, 31, 2025. SECN 200. Expanding application of tax on excess 19 compensation within tax-exempt ORGA 2021. IG, Section 4960 is amended to 22, read as follows, 23. Covered employee. For purposes of 24 this section, the term covered employee means any 25. 987. Employee of an applicable tax-exempt organization. ED, the amendment made by 3 subsections shall apply to taxable years beginning after December 4th, 31, 2025. 02. Modification of excise tax on invest 6-mint income of certain private coal 7 ledges and universities. Section 4968 is amended to read 9 as follows, 10 SEC. 4968. Excise tax based on investment income 11 of private colleges and universities. 12. There is hereby imposed on 13 each applicable educational institution for the taxable year 14 a tax equal to the applicable percentage of the net invest 15-mint income of such institution for the taxable year. 16. AP, for purposes of 17 this section, the term applicable percentage means 18. 1.4% in the case of an institution 19, with a student-adjusted endowment in excess of $2,500,000, and not in excess of $750,000, 21. 7% in the case of an institution with 22, a student-adjusted endowment in excess of $23,750,000, and not in excess of $1,250,000, 24. 988. 14% in the case of an institution 1 with a student-adjusted endowment in excess of $1,250,000 and not in excess of $2 million, and 3. 21% in the case of an institution 4 with a student-adjusted endowment in excess of $2 million. AE institution. For 7 purposes of this subchapter 8. I in general. The term applicable EDU 9 cational institution means an eligible educational institution, 11, which had at least 500 tuition paying 12 students during the preceding taxable year 13. More than 50% of the tuition, 14 paying students of which are located in the 15 United States, 16, which is not 17. Described in the first sentence of 18 section 511 or 20 a qualified religious institution 21 and 22. The student adjusted endowment of 23, which is at least $500,000. 24. 989. Qualified religious institution. For purposes of this subsection, the term qualified religious institution means any institution, established after July 4th, 1776, that was established by or in association with and has continuously maintained an affiliation with an organization described in Section 170, and SAE for purposes of this section, which maintains a published institutional mission that is approved by the governing body of such institution, and that includes, refers to, or is predicated upon religious tenets, beliefs, or teachings. The term student adjusted endowment means, with respect to any institution for any taxable year, the aggregate fair market value of the assets of such institution, other than those assets which are used directly in carrying out the institution's exempt purpose, divided by 990, the number of eligible students of one such institution. Eligible student, for purposes of 3 this subsection. The term eligible student means a 4 student of the institution that meets the student ELI 5 requirements under Section 484 of the 6th Higher Education Act of 1965. Determination of NS. For purposes of subsections in the number 9 of students of an institution 11 shall be based on the daily average number of full-time 12 students attending such institution. And for purposes of 16, this section 17. In general, net investment income 18 shall be determined under rules similar to the rules 19 of section 4940. Override of certain regulatory acts 21. 22. Student loan interest. Net in 23 investment income shall be determined by taking 24 into account any interest income from a student 25. 991. Loan made by the applicable educational institution as gross into investment income. 3. Subsidized 4. 5. Net investment in 6 come shall be determined by taking into 7 account any federally subsidized royalty 8 income as gross investment income. 9 of size 10. For purposes of this sub-11 paragraph, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 19, 20, 21, 22, 20, 24, 25. The term federally subsidized royalty income means any otherwise regulatory exempt royalty income if any federal funds were used in the research, development, or creation of the patent, copyright, or other intellectual or intangible property from which such royalty income is derived. Exempt royalty income. For purposes of this subparagraph, the term otherwise regulatory exempt royalty. 992. Income means royalty income which would not be taken into account as gross investment income by reason of being derived from patents, copyrights, or other intellectual or intangible property which resulted from the work of students or faculty members in their capacities as such with the applicable educational institution. In general, for purposes of subsections, assets and net investment income of any related organization with respect to an educational institution shall be treated as assets. And 993. No such amount shall be taken into account with respect to more than one educational institution, and unless such organization is controlled by such institution or is described in Section 509 with respect to such institution for the taxable year, assets and net investment income which are not intended or available for the use or benefit of the educational institution shall not be taken into account. Related organization. For purposes of this subsection, the term related organization means, with respect to an educational institution, any organization which controls or is controlled by such institution, is controlled by one or more persons which also control such institution, is a supported organization, or an organization described in Section 509 during the taxable year with respect to such institution. 994. The Secretary shall prescribe one such regulations or other guidance as may be necessary to prevent avoidance of the tax under this section, include regulations or other guidance to prevent avoidance of for such tax through the restructuring of endowment funds, 5 or other arrangements designed to reduce or eliminate the 6 value of net investment income or assets subject to the 7 tax imposed by this section. RCINWA Investment IPC. Section 633 is amended by reads 12, ignating subsection as subsection, and by inserting the 13 after subsection, the following new subsection 14. 15 TBI 16 Income PC. Each applicable educational institution described 18 in section 4968, which is sub to the requirements 19 of subsection, shall include on the return required 20 under subsection 21. The number of eligible students taken into 22 account under section 4968 and 23. The number of students of such institution 24. 25. 995. ED. The amendments made by 1 this section shall apply to taxable years beginning after December 2nd, 31, 2025. SEC 1, 2. Increase in rate of tax on net invest for net income of certain private found 5-6. G section 4940 is amended by 7 striking 1.9% and inserting the applicable per 8 centage. AP section 4940 is 10 amended 11. By striking there is hereby and inserting 12 the following 13. I imposition of tax there is hereby 14 and 15. By adding at the end the following new 16 paragraphs 17. Applicable percentage. For purposes 18 of this subsection, the term applicable percentage 19 means, with respect to any taxable year 20. In the case of a private foundation 21, with assets of less than $50 million, 1.39 per 22 cent 23. 996. In the case of a private foundation with assets of at least $50 million and less than $250 million, 2.78%. In the case of a private foundation with assets of at least $250 million and less than $5 billion, 5%, and in the case of a private foundation with assets of at least $5 billion, 10%. A. For purposes of this subsection, the assets of any private foundation shall be determined with respect to any taxable year as being the aggregate fair market value of all assets of such private foundation, as determined as of the close of such taxable year. The preceding sentence shall be applied without reduction for any liabilities. I, in general, for purposes of this subsection and subsection, assets and net investment income of any related organization with respect to a private foundation shall be treated as assets and net investment income, respectively of the private foundation, except that 997. No such amount shall be taken into account with respect to more than 1 private foundation. And 3, unless such organization is controlled by such private foundation, assets 5 and net investment income which are not 6 intended or available for the use or benefit 7 of the private foundation shall not be 8 taken into account. Related organization. For per 10 poses of this paragraph, the term related organization means, with respect to a private found 12-dation, any organization which 13 controls or is controlled by such 14 private foundation, or 15 is controlled by 1 or more per 16 sons, which also control such private found 17-dation. 18. ED. The amendments made by 19 this section shall apply to taxable years beginning after 20, the date of the enactment of this act. 21. 998. SEC 112,023. Certain purchases of employee-owned one stock disregarded for purposes of 2 foundation tax on excess business 3-4. IG, section 4943 is amended 5 by adding at the end the following new clauses. 6. For purposes of clause subpara 7 graph and paragraph any voting stock 8 which 9 is not readily tradable on an East 10 established securities market. 11 is purchased by the business well to price on or after January 1st, 2020, From 13, an employee stock ownership plan in which M15 employees of such business enterprise partici 16 pay in connection with a distribution 17 from such plan. And 18 is held by the business enter 19 prize as treasury stock. Canceled or re-20 tired, 21 shall be treated as outstanding voting stock, but 22 only to the extent so treating such stock would 23 not result in permitted holdings exceeding 49.24%. The preceding sentence shall not apply. 26. 999. With respect to the purchase of stock from a one plan during the 10-year period, beginning on the to date the plan is established. 3. Section 4943 shall not for apply with respect to any decrease in the per 5% of holdings in a business enterprise by 6 reason of the application of clause ed. The amendment made by 8 this section shall apply to taxable years ends ending after the 9 date of the enactment of this act and to purchases by 10 a business enterprise of voting stock in taxable years be 11 ginning after December 31st, 2019. 12 SEC 1. Unrelated business taxable income in 13 increased by amount of certain fringe 14 benefit expenses for which deduction 1516. IG section 512 is amended by 17, adding at the end the following new paragraph 18. Increase in unrelated business tax 19 able income by disallowed fringe. 20. General, unrelated business 21 taxable income and organization shall be in 22 increased by any amount 23, which is paid or incurred by such 24 organization for any qualified transport 25. 1,000. Station fringe or any parking facility used in connection with qualified parking, treatment as income from separate trade or business. For purposes of paragraph, any increase under subpara, which is not directly connected with an unrelated trade or business which is regularly carried on by the organization, and for which a deduction is not allowable under this chapter by reason of section 274. Exception for church organizer. Subparagraph shall not apply to any organization to which section 6033 does not apply by reason of clause or of section 6033. Any church-affiliated organization described in Section 501, which is not required to file an annual return under Section 6033, by reason of Section 6033. 1001. Graph shall be treated as unrelated business taxable income with respect to an unrelated trade or business separate from any other unrelated trade or business of the organization. 1, 2, 3, 4. The Secretary shall 5 issue such regulations or other guidance as may 6th be necessary or appropriate to carry out the 7 purposes of this paragraph, including regulations or other guidance, providing for the APRO 9 prior allocation of costs with respect to facility 10 ties used for parking. ED. The amendment made by 12 this section shall apply to amounts paid or incurred after December 13th, 31, 2025. 14 SEC 1 Luke A. Exclusion of research income limited 15 to publicly available research. Section 512 is amended by 17 striking from research and inserting from such re-18 search. 19. ED. The amendment made by this section shall apply to amounts received or accrued 21 after December 31st, 2025. 1002. SEC 112,026. Limitation on excess business losses of non-corporate taxpayers. RMP Section 461 is amended by striking, and before January 1st, 2029, each place it appears. DB aspect to pay. Section 461 is amended to read as follows. Disallowed loss carryover. Any loss disallowed under paragraph for any taxable year shall be treated for purposes of this title as a loss attributable to a trade or business of the taxpayer, other than a trade or business described in the last sentence of paragraph arising in the subsequent taxable year. to the extent provided by the Secretary for purposes of applying Section 1341 and Subtitle F. A loss treated as arising under the preceding sentence shall be treated, to the extent not inconsistent with the purposes of this subsection, in a manner similar to the manner in which net operating losses are treated for purposes of such provisions. ED. The amendments made by this section shall apply to losses arising of the Internal Revenue Code 1003 of 1986, as amended by this section, in taxable years beginning after December 31st, 2024. SEC 112,027. 1% floor on deduction of charitable contributions made by corporations. IG Section 170 is amended to read as follows. Any charitable contribution or subparagraph applies, or any contribution for which a deduction is not allowable under this section without regard to. This paragraph shall be allowed as a deduction under this subsection only to the extent that the aggregate of such contributions exceeds 1% of the taxpayer's taxable income and does not exceed 10% of the taxpayer's taxable income. Application of C. Section 170 is amended to read as follows. In general, any charitable contribution taken into account under subsection for any taxable year which is not all 1004. Load as a deduction by reason of clause thereof shall be taken into account as a charitable contribution for the succeeding taxable year, except that, for purposes of determining under this subparagraph whether such contribution is allowed in such succeeding taxable year, contributions in such succeeding taxable year shall be taken into account under subsection before any contribution taken into account by reason of this paragraph. 5-year carry forward. No charitable contribution may be carried forward under subparagraph to any taxable year following the taxable year after the taxable year in which the charitable contribution was first taken into account. For purposes of the preceding sentence, contributions shall be treated as allowed on a first-in, first-out basis. C. Contributions disallowed by 1% floor carried forward only from years in which 10% limitation is exceeded. In the case of any taxable year from which a charitable contribution is carried forward under subparagraph deter. 1005. Mind without regard this subparagraph, sub 1 paragraph shall be applied by substituting to clause or for clause. 3. Special rule for net operating 4. The amount of charitable 5 contributions carried forward under subpara 6 graph shall be reduced to the extent that 7 such carry forward would reduce taxable income, an increase in net operating loss 11 carryover under section 172 to a succeeding 12 taxable year. 13. CA subparagraph 14. And of section 170 are each amended 15 by inserting other than subparagraph thereof after 16 subsection. The amendments made by 18 this section shall apply to taxable years beginning after December 19th, 31, 2025. By SEC 1202. Enforcement of remedies against non-21 fair foreign taxes. 22. Subpart of Part 2 of Sub 20 Chapter N of Chapter 1 is amended by adding at the end 24 the following new section 25. 1006. SEC 899. Enforcement of remedies against unfair foreign taxes. Taxes other than withholding, specified rate of tax. For purposes of this paragraph, the term specified rate of tax means the rates of tax specified in paragraphs and of Section 871. In the case of any applicable person to which Section 871 applies, each rate of tax in effect under Section 1, the rate of tax specified in Section 881. In the case of any applicable person to which Section 882 applies, the rate of tax specified in Section 11, the rate of tax specified in Section 884, and in the case of any applicable person, each specified rate of tax shall be increased by the applicable number of percentage points. 1007. The rate of tax specified in Sec 1 Shin 4948. 2. Application of increased rates. 3. To effectively the income of non-4 resident alien individuals limited to 5 gains on United States real property in 6. In the case of any individual to 7 whom subparagraph applies, the tax amate posed under Section 1 on such individual shall be retenduced by the excess of 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. For purposes of this clause, the term FERP to 20 items means gains and losses taken into 21 count under Section 871 by reason of Sec. 22 Shin 897. 23, 24, 25. The tax which would be imposed under such section, if FERPTA items were not taken into account, over. The tax which would be imposed under such section if FERPTA items were not taken into account, and subparagraph did not apply. Application of increased rates to certain foreign governments. 1008. Case of any applicable person described in subsection, Section 892 shall not apply. Modification of base erosion and abuse. In the case of any corporation described in subsection, such corporation shall be treated as described in subparagraphs, and of Section 59A, for purposes of determining whether such corporation is an applicable taxpayer. Section 59A shall be applied by substituting 12.5% for 10% in subparagraph, and by treating the amount described in Section 59A as being zero. Subsections and of Section 59A shall not apply. If any amount would have been a base erosion payment described in Section 59A, but for the fact that the taxpayer capitalizes. 1009. The amount, then solely for purposes of calculating the taxpayer's base erosion payments and base erosion tax benefits. Such amount shall be treated as if it had been deducted rather than capitalized. Withholding taxes. In general, in the case of any payment to an applicable person, each rate of tax specified in Section 1441 or 1442 shall be increased by the applicable number of percentage points. The preceding sentence shall not apply to the 14% rate of tax specified in Section 1441. Disposition of United States real property interests. In the case of any disposition of a United States real property interest by an applicable person, the rate of tax specified in Section 1445 shall be increased by the applicable number of percentage points. 1010. Other dispositions and distributions related to United States real property interests. In the case of any disposition or distribution described in any paragraph of Section 1445, each rate of tax in such paragraph shall be increased by the applicable number of percentage points if, in the case of Section 1445, the foreign person referred to in subparagraph or of such section is an applicable person. In the case of Section 1445, the foreign corporation referred to in such section is an applicable person. In the case of Section 1445, the foreign shareholder referred to in such section is an applicable person. In the case of Section 1445, the foreign person referred to in such section is an applicable person. 1011. In the case of Section 1445, 1. The Secretary issues regulations or other guidance providing for such increase, and 3. In the case of Section 1445, 4. The non-resident alien individual or foreign 5 corporation referred to in such section is 6. An applicable person. Applicable number of percentage 8. For purposes of this paragraph 9. In general, the term applicable 10 number of percentage points means with re-11 respect to any discriminatory foreign country 12. With respect to the 1-year period 13 beginning on the applicable date with re-14 to sectors of foreign country 5 percentage 15 points and 16, 17, 18, 19. 5 percentage points plus 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. With respect to any period after the 1-year period to which clause applies, the sum of An additional 5 percentage points for each annual anniversary of such applicable date which has occurred before the beginning of such period. 1012. C. Notwithstanding subparagraph, the increase in any rate under paragraph or shall not result in such rate exceeding the amount of the statutory rate increased by 20 percentage points. For purposes of this section, the term applicable date means with respect to any discriminatory foreign country, the first day of the first calendar year beginning on or after the latest of 90 days after the date of enactment of this section, 180 days after the date of enactment of the unfair foreign tax that causes such country to be treated as a discriminatory foreign country, or the first date that an unfair foreign tax of such country begins to apply. Application to taxable years. For purposes of paragraph, the applicable number of percentage points is the applicable number of percentage points in effect for the discriminatory foreign country during the tax. And then 13. Payer's taxable year. If more than one applicable number of percentage points is in effect for the discriminatory foreign country during the taxpayer's taxable year, the applicable number of percentage points shall be determined by using a weighted average rate based on each applicable number of percentage points in effect during such taxable year and the number of days during which it was in effect. For purposes of the prior sentence, the applicable number of percentage points in effect for the discriminatory foreign country for the period before the applicable date is treated as zero. And if the taxpayer ceases to be an applicable person during its taxable year, the applicable number of percentage points in effect for the discriminatory foreign country for the period after the taxpayer ceased to be an applicable person is treated as zero. Application to withholding. For purposes of paragraph, the applicable number of percentage points shall be determined with respect to the date of the payment or disposition, as the case may be. 1014. Multiple discriminatory foreign. For purposes of paragraphs, and if on any day the taxpayer is an applicable person with respect to more than one discriminatory foreign country, the highest applicable number of percentage points in effect shall apply. Increase not applicable to non-discriminatory foreign countries. In the case of any foreign country which is not a discriminatory foreign country, the applicable number of percentage points is zero. Years to which applicable. In the case of any person, paragraphs and shall apply to each taxable year beginning after the later of 90 days after the date of enactment of this section. 180 days after the date of enactment of the unfair foreign tax that causes such country to be treated as a discriminatory foreign country, or 1015. The first date that an unfair foreign tax of such country begins to apply, and before the last date on which the discriminatory foreign country imposes an unfair foreign tax. In the case of any person, paragraph shall apply to each calendar year, beginning during the period that such person is an applicable person. Safe harbor for withholding. Paragraph shall not apply in the case of any applicable person to which clause does not apply if the discriminatory foreign country with respect to which such person is an applicable person is not listed by the Secretary as a discriminatory foreign country, and in the case of any applicable person described in subparagraph or of subsection, if the discriminatory foreign country with respect to which such person is an applicable person has been listed in such guidance for less than 90 days. 1016. Temporary safe harbor for one withholding agents. No penalties or intertuis shall be imposed with respect to failures. B3 for January 1st, 2027, to deduct or withhold for any amounts by reason of paragraph if the 5-person required to deduct or withhold such 6 amounts demonstrates to the satisfaction of the 7 Secretary that such person made best efforts to 8 comply with paragraph in a timely manner. A P for purposes of this 10 section 11. I in general, except as otherwise pro 12 provided by the Secretary, the term applicable person 13's 14. Any government of any discriminatory foreign 16 country 17. Any individual who is tax 19 resident of a discriminatory foreign country 20. Any foreign corporation, which is a tax resi 23 debt of a discriminatory foreign country 24. 1017. Any private foundation created or organized in a discriminatory foreign country. Any foreign corporation if more than 50% of the total combined voting power of all classes of stock of such corporation entitled to vote, or the total value of the stock of such corporation is owned by persons described in this paragraph. Any trust the majority of the beneficial interests of which are held by persons described in this paragraph, and foreign partnerships, branches, and any other entity identified with respect to a discriminatory foreign country by the Secretary for purposes of this subsection. Continuation of treatment during. For purposes of this section, if a person would cease to be an applicable person for a period of less than 1 year, such person shall 1018. UFT for purposes of this section. IN general. The term unfair foreign tax means an undertaxed profits rule. Digital services tax, diverted profits tax, and to the extent provided by the Secretary, an extraterritorial tax, discriminatory tax, or any other tax enacted with a public or stated purpose indicating the tax will be economically borne, directly or indirectly, disproportionately by United States persons. Such term shall not include any tax which neither applies to any United States person nor any foreign corporation if the foreign corporation is a controlled foreign corporation and more than 50% of the total combined voting power of all classes of stock of such corporation entitled to vote, or the total value of the stock of such corporation is owned by United States persons. 1019. Extraterritorial. The term extraterritorial tax means any tax imposed by a foreign country on a corporation which is determined by reference to any income or profits received by any person including any trade or business of any person, by reason of such person being connected to such corporation through any chain of ownership, determined without regard to the ownership interests of any individual, and other than by reason of such corporation having a direct or indirect ownership interest in such person. Discriminatory tax. The term discriminatory tax means any tax imposed by a foreign country if such tax applies more than incidentally to items of income that would not be considered to be from sources or effectively connected to a trade or business within the foreign country under the rules of Part 1 of this subchapter if such part were applied by treating such foreign country as though it were the United States. 1020. The net income, and is not computed by permitting recovery of costs and expenses. Such tax is exclusively or predominantly applicable, in practice or by its terms, to non-resident individuals and foreign corporations or partnerships, and of Section 7701 by treating the foreign country as though it were the United States, because of the application of revenue thresholds, exemptions, or exclusions for taxpayers subject to such foreign countries' corporate income tax, or restrictions of scope that ensure that substantially all residents, other than foreign corporations and partnerships supplying comparable goods or services are excluded from the application of such tax. Such tax is not treated as an income tax under the laws of such foreign country, or is otherwise treated by such foreign country as outside the scope of any agreements that are in force between such foreign country and one or more other jurisdictions for the avoidance of double taxation with respect to taxes on income. 1021. Except as otherwise provided by the Secretary, the terms extraterritorial tax and discriminatory tax shall not include any generally applicable tax which constitutes an income tax generally imposed on the income of citizens or residents of the foreign country, even if the computation of income includes payments that would be foreign source income under Part 1 of this subchapter, An income tax, which would be an unfair foreign tax solely because it is imposed on the income of non-residents attributable to a trade or business in such foreign country. An income tax, which would be an unfair foreign tax solely because it is imposed on citizens or residents of such foreign country by reference to the income of a corporate subsidiary of such person. A withholding tax or other gross basis tax on any amount described in Section 871 or 881, other than any withholding tax or other gross basis tax imposed. 1022. With respect to services performed by persons other than individuals. A value-added tax, goods and services tax, sales tax, or other similar tax on consumption. Any other tax identified by the Secretary for purposes of this paragraph. OD for purposes of this section. A tax imposed with respect to transactions on a per unit or per transaction basis, rather than an ad valorem basis. A tax on real or personal property, an estate tax, a gift tax, other similar tax. A tax which would not be an extraterritorial tax or discriminatory tax, except by reason of consolidation or loss-sharing rules that generally apply only with respect to income of tax residents of the foreign country, or discriminatory foreign country. The term discriminatory foreign country means any foreign country which has one or more unfair foreign taxes. 1023. Foreign country. The term foreign country means a foreign country or a dependent territory or possession of a foreign country. Such term does not include any possession of the United States. The term tax includes any increase in tax, whether effectuated by an increase in the rate or base of a tax, by a denial of deductions or credits, or otherwise. R. Regulations and OG. The 10th Secretary shall issue such regulations or items 11 as may be necessary or appropriate to carry out the per 12 poses of this section, including regulations or other GID 13 ants which 14. Provide for such adjustments to the application of this section as are necessary to prevent the avoidance of the purposes of this section, including the application of this section, including subsections. And with respect to branches, partnerships, and other entities. List the discriminatory foreign countries in guidance, and update such guidance on a quarterly basis. 1024. Provide notice to Congress with respect to changes to the list under paragraph 2. Exercise the authority to provide exceptions 3 under subsections, and 4. Prevent the application of subsection 5 from resulting in double counting of 6 amounts for purposes of section 59A. 7. CA the table of sections 8 for subpart D of part 2 of subchapter N of chapter 19 is amended by adding at the end the following new item 10 sec. 899. Enforcement of remedies against unfair foreign taxes. SEC 112,029. Reduction of excise tax on firearms I 1112. Section 5811 is amended to 13 read as follows 14. There shall be levied, collected, and paid 15 on firearms transferred a tax at the rate of 16. $5 for each firearm transferred in the case 17 of a weapon classified as any other weapon under 18 section 5845-19. $0 for each firearm transferred in the case 20 of a silencer, and 21. $200 for any other firearm transferred. 22. ED. The amendment made by 23 this section shall apply to transfers after the date of the 24 enactment of this act. 25. 10.5 SEC 1230. Modifications to the de minimis entry privy 1 ledge for commercial shipments. Additional penalty imposed. Section 4. 321 of the Tariff Act of 1930 is 5 amended by adding at the end the following new 6 subsection. 7. Any person who enters, introduces, facilitates, 8, or attempts to introduce an article into the United States 9, using the privilege of this section, the importation of which 10 violates any other provision of United States law, shall be 11 assessed, in addition to any other penalty permitted by 12 law, a civil penalty of up to $5,000 for the first violation 13, and up to $10,000 for each subsequent violation. Effective date. The amendment made 15 by paragraph shall take effect 30 days after the 16 date of the enactment of this act. REP 18. 19. R. Section 321 of such Act 20 is amended by striking 21 of this Act, or in all that follows through sub 22 division and inserting of this Act in. 23. C on egg. Subsection of 24 such section 321 as added by subsection of this 25 section is repealed. 26. 1026. The amendments made one by this subsection shall take effect on July 1st, 2027. 2 SEC 120. Limitation on drawback of taxes paid 3 with respect to substituted merchant 4-5 effective for claims filed on or after July 1st, 2026. 6 for purposes of drawback of internal revenue tax imposed 7 under Chapter 52 of the Internal Revenue Code of 1986. 8. The amount of drawback granted under such code, or the 9 Tariff Act of 1930, on the export or destruction of substituted merchandise may not exceed the amount of taxes 11 paid 12 on the substituted merchandise. 3rd CC 1211, permitting premium tax credit only for 16 certain individuals. 17. IG, Section 36B is amended by 18 inserting, or in the case of aliens who are lawfully 19 present, are not eligible aliens after individuals who are 20 not lawfully present. 21. EA Section 36B is amend 22 ed 23. Part 2, removing taxpayer benefits for 14 illegal immigrants. 15. 1027. By striking for purposes of this section an individual and inserting the following for purposes of this section. In general, an individual. By adding at the end the following new subparagraph. An alien who is lawfully admitted for permanent residence under the Immigration and Nationality Act. An alien who, eligible aliens. An individual who is an alien and law present shall be treated as an eligible alien if and only if such individual is, and is reasonably expected to be for the entire period of enrollment for which the credit under this section is being claimed, is a citizen or national of the Republic of Cuba, is the beneficiary of an approved petition under Section 203 of the Immigration and Nationality Act, meets all eligibility requirements for an immigrant visa, but 1028, for whom such a visa is not immediately available, is not otherwise inadmissible under Section 212 of such act, and is physically present in the United States pursuant to a grant of parole in furtherance of the commitment of the United States to the minimum level of annual legal migration of Cuban nationals to the United States specified in the U.S. Cuba. Joint Communique on Migration done at New York September 9, 1994, and reaffirmed in the Cuba-United States Joint Statement on Normalization of Migration, building on the agreement of September 9, 1994, done at New York May 2, 1995, or an individual who lawfully resides in the United States in accordance with a compact of free association referred to in Section 402 of the Personal Responsibility and Work Opportunity 1029, Opportunity Reconciliation Act of 1996. Verification of information. Section 414.11 of the Patient Protection and Affordable Care 5 Act is amended. 6. In subsection 7. In paragraph by striking and 8 Section 36B of the Internal Revenue 9 Code of 1986, and 10. In paragraph 11. In subparagraph by strict 12ing and at the end. 13. In subparagraph by add 14ing at the end and 15. By adding at the end, this is 16 following new subparagraph 17. In the case such individual is an alien 18 lawfully present in the United States, whether 19 such individual is an eligible alien of such code. 21. In subsection by adding at the 22 end the following new subparagraph 23. I am migration status. In the case 24, the individual's eligibility is based on an ATS 25. 1030. Attestation of the enrollee's immigration status, and one attestation that such individual is an eligible 2 alien of the 3 Internal Revenue Code of 1986. And 4. In subsection, by adding 5 at the end, the following new subclause. 6. In the case of an Indy 77 individual described in clause with 8 respect to whom a premium tax credit 9 or reduced cost sharing under section 1036B of the Internal Revenue Code of 11/1986 or section 1402 is being claimed. 12. The attestation that the individual is 13 and eligible alien of such code. 15. Advanced determinations. Section 161412 of the Patient Protection and Affordable 17 Care Act is amended by in 18, inserting before the period at the end the following. 19. Or in the case of aliens who are lawfully present, 20 are not eligible aliens of the Internal Revenue Code of 1986. 22. C. Sharing Section 2014-02 of the Patient Protection Affordable 24 Care Act is amended. 25. 1031. In paragraph, in the matter preceding subparagraph, by inserting, or in the case of an alien who is lawfully present, is not an eligible alien of the Internal Revenue Code of 1986, after not lawfully present, and by amending paragraph to read as follows. Eligible aliens. For purposes of this section, an individual shall be treated as an eligible alien of the Internal Revenue Code of 1986, if, and only if, the individual is, and for the entire period of enrollment for which the cost-sharing reduction under this section is being claimed is reasonably expected to be such an alien. Basic Health Program. Section 1331 of the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act is amended by inserting before the period at the end the following. Or in the case of an alien who is lawfully present, an individual who is not an eligible alien as defined. 1032. In Section 36B of the Internal Revenue Code of 1986. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 6. The heading for Section 36B is amended 7 by inserting NEA after INLP. The heading for Section 36B is amended by inserting eligible aliens after L. RMEC. Section 5000A is amended by striking an alien lawfully present in the United States and inserting an eligible alien. R. The Secretary of the Treasury and the Secretary of Health and Human Services may each prescribe such rules and other guidance as may be necessary or appropriate to carry out the amendments made by this section. ED. The amendments made by this section, other than the amendments made by E. The amendments made by this subsection shall apply with respect to plan years beginning on or after January 1st, 2027. 1033. Section. Shall apply to taxable years beginning after December 1st, 31, 2026. SEC 112,102. Disallowing premium tax credit during 3 periods of Medicaid ineligibility due 4 to alien status. IG Section 36B is amended by 6 striking subparagraph and by redesignating subpara 7 graphs on as subparagraphs and 8, respectively 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Section 36B is amended by striking subsection and inserting subsection. Section 1331 of the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act is amended by striking, or, in the case of an all that follows through such alien status. Section 1402 of such act is amended by striking the second sentence. R. The Secretary of the Treasury 22 and the Secretary of Health and Human Services May 23rd each prescribe such rules and other guidance as may be 24. 1034. Necessary or appropriate to carry out the amendments one made by the section. ED. The amendments made by 3 this section shall apply to taxable years beginning after December 4th, 2025. 5 SCC to limiting Medicare coverage of certain 6-7 Title XV of the Social Security Act is amended by adding the full 9 new section 10 SEC. 1899C limiting Medicare coverage of certain 11-12. G notwithstanding section 226. 13 section 26A. Section 401 of the Personal Responsibility 14 and Work Opportunity Reconciliation Act of 1996, or any 15 other provision of this title, but subject to subsection 16, an individual may be entitled to or enrolled for benefits 17 under this title only if the individual is 18, a citizen or national of the United States 19, an alien who is lawfully admitted for per 20 maintenance residence under the Immigration and Net 21 Chanel Act 22, an alien who 23 is a citizen or national of the Repub 24 Lic of Cuba 25. 1035 is the beneficiary of an approved petition under Section 203 of the Immigration to and Nationality Act 3. Meets all eligibility requirements for an immigrant visa, but for whom such a visa is 5 not immediately available. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. Is not otherwise inadmissible under Section 212 of such act, and is physically present in the United States pursuant to a grant of parole in furtherance of the commitment of the United States to the minimum level of annual legal migration of Cuban nationals to the United States specified in the U.S.-Cuba Joint Communique on Migration, done at New York September 9, 1994, and reaffirmed in the Cuba-United States Joint Statement on Normalization of Migration, building on the Agreement of September 9, 1994, done at New York May 2, 1995. An individual who lawfully resides in the United States in accordance with a compact of free association referred to in Section 402 of the Personal Responsibility and Work Opportunity Reconciliation Act of 1996. 1036. In the case of an individual who is entitled to or enrolled for benefits under this title as of the date of the enactment of this section, subsection shall apply beginning on the date that is 1 year after such date of enactment. Review by Commissioner of Social. In general, not later than 6 months after the date of the enactment of this section, the Commissioner of Social Security shall complete a review of individuals entitled to or enrolled for benefits under this title as of such date of enactment for purposes of identifying individuals not described in any of paragraphs through of subsection. The Commissioner of Social Security shall notify each individual identified under the review conducted under subparagraph that such individual's entitlement to or enrollment for benefits under this title will be terminated as of the date that is 1 year after the date of the enactment of this section. Such notification shall be made as soon as practicable. 1037. After such identification, and in a manner to one signed to ensure such individuals comprehend two scion of such notification.
Welcome to Executive Order Watch.
The immigrants have arrived.
I know. I have the package.